Alright, I wanted to record a follow-up to our funnel intro video, which really unpacked some of the key ways that we can get from an abrupt transition in the funnel intro to something that's more developed. Let's take a look at this first introductory paragraph. You may recognize it. So this starts that Iron Man is one of the most famous superheroes in Marvel Comics. Totally fine hook. We've got some hook context. Iron Man is admired not only because he is a billionaire, but a genius inventor who is an ordinary man. With the help of his self-made suit, he can save the world along with his iconic Avengers. The reasoning behind Iron Man's fame is his heroic nature and jealousy of his billion-dollar lifestyle. But look what happens in this transition. That's all been hook context. We haven't stopped talking about Iron Man. Next sentence, these two characteristics, heroism and jealousy, are the two main ideas that provide meaning in Beowulf and Grendel. Wait, whoa! How did we get to Beowulf and Grendel? That transition is way too abrupt. And what that ultimately is a failure of transition. So let's take a look down here. I've copy-pasted the exact same hook and hook context that a student provided. And now you're going to see that I start building this bridge that uses the techniques of talking about these ideas as being timeless or being across time and space or being something that unites all people, something that makes the ideas of the hook context seem like they could apply to anything, which is of course what we want to do because we want them to apply to the literary text we're going to write on. Let's take a look at that. These two characteristics, heroism and jealousy, are two ideas that provide meaning throughout time. You see that phrase? That's the phrase which is doing work for me right here. Throughout time. Okay? That builds that bridge. In fact, some of literature's earliest writers. Okay, so we're getting a little more specific, but we're still talking this deals with a lot of people. Pondered whether a person can be motivated by heroism and jealousy. So the ideas come back. One example. And why is one example better than just jumping into the one example up here? I mean, we gave one example up here. Why is it better to say one example of these early writers? Because that implies that there are other examples. One example of these early writers is the poet who composed Beowulf. But this question is not limited. Okay, another good phrase that talks about the kind of constant presence of these ideas in multiple times and places, which helps us build bridges between the hook and the thesis. A contemporary writer who contemplates the same issues as John Gardner. And then we're at thesis context by this point. Okay, so I'm going to de-highlight that because that's not really part of the transition. But you can see how these bolded phrases are some of the ways that you can build a less abrupt, a more developed transition between the hook and the thesis.